supervisor is a 1, I would say approaching them from the perspective of compliance or social justice, like this is the right thing to do, and then providing evidence of why, because that's going to speak to them and be more compelling. For a 2, being the helper, I would say this is going to help people. 2s also really want to be liked. So, and this sounds a bit manipulative, I think, but, take it with a grain of salt, I would say. Like, this is not the only way or reason to approach someone this way, but, if your supervisor is a 2, they're going to want to be helpful. And so you can let them know ways in which they can help you, things that would be helpful for the team, what would help the organization. And know that they want to be liked. And so something that you're bringing to them that's going to cause a lot of disruption, disharmony, have a plan for how to mitigate that, right? So maybe that's the right thing to do, to dive into a conflict head on, but know that your 2 boss is not going to go there immediately, and we'll need to see the benefits of creating disharmony in the group. For 3s, they want to win. So they want to look good. So if you have opportunities for gaining recognition for your organization or your team or your boss, applying for an award or an honorary something, that's going to really appeal to them. And if you yourself have done something positive that brings your organization into a good light, be sure to put that in front of them, because that will give you extra favor, I would say, for a 3.
Okay.
4s are individualists or creative. They like to be unique. They like to stand apart. So if you have something that is going to make your organization different, or you have a really creative idea, or you are able to help them with one of their creative ideas, that's gonna be looked upon, I think, favorably by a 4. They have a lot of good ideas and creativity, and if you can help bring that to fruition, I think that would be helpful for the 4 leader. 5s have the need for data, research, understanding the why. So I kind of shared earlier, like if you're going to come to me as your supervisor, I'm going to want to know, why are we doing this? What does the data support? 4s, 5s, and 9s are past thinkers. So we like to look at the past and see how that informs the present. 3s, 7s, and 8s are future thinkers. So they're going to want to know, they're going to want to focus on the future, and they're not going to want to focus on the past so much.
Yeah.
6s are loyalists or loyal skeptics, and they're motivated by safety and security. So if you have anything that involves risk or potential threat, you're going to want to mitigate that with your boss and show why or why not the decision or the course of action is safe. And if it's not safe, what you're doing to assure that the whole thing doesn't come crashing down.
Yeah, I want to interject for just a moment, because the 6 made me think of this, but with all of these, I'm sure that there's multiple things where it almost makes, like, if they're giving you feedback, or like a 6, if they're questioning you, I know sometimes that might feel like, do they not trust me? Are they questioning my abilities? But knowing that somebody, your boss, kind of is motivated by those things, it makes sense, and it can feel like less of a personal attack, and just, oh, this is just it. Like, I don't have to attach meaning to it. And I'm sure that there's things with each of those where maybe it can irk you or make you feel a certain way, but when you know the story behind it, it can make it just a little easier maybe to take, or do it, without making it personal, and just, it is what it is, because it's so easy to attach meaning to certain things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a big part of what I mean when I say don't don't take things personally, or the Enneagram helps you to not take things personally. And that's a big one. Like, I think when we get questioned, when people ask us why, tell me more, I don't understand,
Yeah.
that can feel very much like an attack or a lack of value or lack of trust. But for certain types, like ones, fives, sixes, um, they ask a lot of questions, and their motivation is slightly different, right? The one wants to ask questions because they want to know, is this the right thing? The five wants to understand the whole thing, and the six wants to make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
So those types are more likely to ask questions, and just understanding that as a peer, as a coworker, as an employee, that these questions are not to um, invalidate you or to question your competence or to demonstrate a lack of trust. They're questions that that person needs in order to get their need met, which ultimately you need to get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. Okay, so what about seven? What are some
Yeah.
clues about
So
them?
sevens like to have fun. They don't like to go too deep into the details or the heaviness. So, if you're pitching an idea to a seven, you want to keep it really high level and present it in a way that is fun versus like a doomsday approach. This is what's coming and it's all bad. They want to know like what's good and what's next and what's fun and what's outside the box. um and not to say you shouldn't, again, this is the five in me saying you need to have all those details ironed out as well, but when you go to your boss, know that they're not going to necessarily want to have that level of detail.
Yeah, I will say as a seven that hits that totally hits because it can feel like so overwhelming initially if it's like new idea, all these details where it's like let's just high level it. And of course, like we need to get there, but that one totally resonates. I feel that one, Joy.
I had a job managing a bunch of students at one point, and I always felt like my job was just vibe control, like keeping the up and keeping things moving. And we did a lot of events, and they were a really fun group. But my boss and I would joke that, being a manager is often just vibe control. And I think it's
Yeah.
the same with managing your boss. Like, what's the vibe? Read the room, right? If your boss
Yeah.
is like checking out and their eyes are glazed over, like, know your impact. And I think that's where you were saying, like, it comes back to knowing yourself too. Like, we tend to
Yeah.
communicate in the way that we like to be communicated with,
Yeah.
and it's different for different people. So if I come with a bunch of spreadsheets to my boss who's a seven, I'm going to lose their attention right away.
Yeah.
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 Better to keep it like visual with the big, you know,
Big ideas. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know we've talked a little about the eight. Anything else to add?
Yeah, so eights, like sevens, they are high energy, intense. Threes, sevens, eights have similar energy. And the difference with the seven and the eight is, and actually all three of them are in different harmonic groups. So the seven, since we were just talking about seven, they're optimists, and so they're going to look at a problem optimistically and frame it in a positive way, look on the bright side. The eight doesn't necessarily need to have it framed positively, but they're going to bring a lot of intensity to it. So it's not necessarily positive or negative, but just meeting, again, like I said in my earlier example, meeting them where they're at so that they know that you're in it with them.
Mm.
And that's really important to eights, that we're in it together. They are sensitive to betrayal, kind of like the sixes, the loyalist and the six is sensitive to betrayal. And so um, just being aware of that might be something that they're constantly thinking about and wondering, can I trust you? And do you have my best interest at heart? And are you going to betray me? Yeah, and then nines are the peacemaker. And so they're going to want to keep things harmonious. They're also optimists like the sevens. So they're looking on the bright side. They want to focus on the good. And the thing about the nine, I would say I talk a lot about managing nines because they have great ideas and they can see all sides. And when they get into a group, they can have a difficult time um, saying what they think the group should do
Right.
because they just kind of go along to get along.
Yeah.
So if you have a nine as a supervisor, it could be that they change their mind a lot. So they, one person might come in and pitch an idea and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then someone comes in and pitches the opposite of that idea.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, oh, well, that sounds good too. So don't be surprised if your nine boss can see the good in both sides, every side. That might be frustrating, I could imagine, as someone who reports to a nine. But again, that's where it's important not to take things personally and just know
Yeah.
that, if you work for someone who does see all sides, that could be good for your organization in other ways. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. That
Great question. And I do tell this story in a lot of my trainings because this particular situation with my boss is what really sold me on the Enneagram. So I'll just share briefly
yeah.
that I'm a five. So many of the folks who follow my work know I'm a five. And at the time, my supervisor was an eight. And she and I worked closely in a program that helped students in crisis. And so frequently we would get a call from the hospital or the police saying that there's been a crisis and someone from our office needed to go out and respond. And when we first started working together, she would come into my office, so eight, full of energy, all in, intense, like, there's a crisis. And I would look up at her from my desk and be like, okay, I'm on it. I'll go to the hospital. And after the first year of working together in my evaluation, she made some comments about not really knowing um, if I was capable of handling the crisis or if I was dealing with it, in the most taking it as seriously as I should. And I'm kind of paring down my story for this purpose, but and then I went to this Enneagram Institute training, Introduction to the Enneagram, and I learned about harmonic groups and the different ways that the types deal with crisis, stress, conflict. And so for the five, we're in the competency group. We deal with things rationally, logically, and unemotionally. Eights bring a lot of energy, intensity, and they need to know that you get it. You understand the importance, the severity, the level of seriousness. And so that was like an aha moment for me. So I went back to work that after that workshop, and the next time she came into my office, I literally stood up out of my desk, looked her in the eye, and I was like, I got this. I got your back. I'm on it. And I could just see like a visible shift in her response. She kind of took a sigh, like, okay, I can give you this. I know that you have it, and I have faith and confidence in you. And that year my evaluations were totally different, like completely changed in terms of her level of trust. She just felt like I was so much more capable of anything. And honestly, after she left my office, I sat down back at my desk and I did the same thing that I always would do: call the hospital, go see the student, deal with the crisis. But she needed that confirmation that I was going to meet her where she was at. And without that, there was a little bit of doubt, like, do I really have it? Can't you really give me the ball and trust that I'm going to take care of the thing? So that is, for me, one of the biggest gifts that the Enneagram has given me in my personal life, or my professional life, I should say. And I do that still with other supervisors that I have, people who are in roles, in the organizational structure that are over my own, and it has helped a lot. It's also helped me to not take things personally. If I'm talking to someone and I'm providing too much detail and they just want to get to the point, I can see, oh, they're a 3 or they're an 8. They don't need all this background information. And it's not because they don't like me or they don't think that I'm doing a good job. But it's not the way that it's not what they need to make a decision or to move forward.
Um, and as you were talking, I was thinking like maybe the 8 would give me the same vein of feedback as, let's say, I don't know, a 2, but maybe the delivery would be even a little different, and knowing that could be helpful in accepting it, because I think sometimes too that that's part of that, and how it's received, but it's like, wow, man, this age just really gave it to me. That was direct. It's like, well, that's how that person is. So
Yeah.
that might be a little easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. It has a lot to do with the other person, what their communication style is.
Yeah,
And
communication style.
yeah, I'll also say, going back to our mainstream American culture, that we really value direct communication. But that's not necessarily the way that all people feel comfortable communicating. So understanding that there's different ways of communicating, um, and being willing to dig a little bit deeper. Somebody from a collectivistic culture might be trying to give you feedback, and I've heard people say, um, like leaders, I had this employee, they were hinting at something, but they didn't come right out and say it, and I need direct communication. Well, in some cultures, hinting at something is as direct as you're going to get, because they're not going to publicly embarrass you or call you out if you're their supervisor. So as a leader, I think it's helpful to know, what is happening out in my organization that I should be seeing, um, and how do I figure it out if people aren't going to communicate it to me directly?